Hello and welcome to this McGraw-Hill Education webinar, Learning and Teaching with Technology, the TPACK model. I'm Antonio Rabel with McGraw-Hill Education, and I will be the webinar moderator for today's session. Before we get started, I'd like to go over quick housekeeping items. We want to make this session as engaging as possible, so please be sure to actively participate in the conversation. On your screen, you will see different engagement windows that can be dragged around the screen or enlarged to your liking. Included in these windows are a chat and Q&A box. Use the chat to share your thoughts throughout the presentation. At the end of the presentation, there will be time for Q&A, so please enter any questions you may have for the presenter into the QA box. Please also enter any technical questions you may have into the QA box, and the InExpo support team will help troubleshoot with you. We will be offering several chances to interact, including polling throughout the session, so be sure to join in. Joining us today is Karen Limbacher. For over 2 decades, Karen Limbacher has devoted her career to supporting educators in the classroom and by planning and developing digital content solutions for district, school, and classroom use. Karen is currently the Director of Content and Professional Development for the Platform Portfolio at McGraw-Hill Education, where she conceptualizes and manages development of digital-first curriculums and the training of administrators and teachers on the benefits and best practices around improving digital teaching practices. Karen holds a Master's of Education in Instructional Technology. Hello, Karen.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Antonio, and welcome. I've noticed that there are people from all over joining us today, and so I look forward to a great session, as interactive as we can be from across the miles that we are at. So before we begin, I want to just take a few minutes. I know all of us have had very busy days, and I want to take a few minutes to get us where we are today and what we're going to be focusing in on. So before we even get started and before I even talk a little bit about myself, why don't we just step out and think about maybe one of the favorite lessons that you have implemented in your classroom. Think about, just to place some context, think about like what content you covered, what instructional strategies you sought after, and what technologies that you were using to deliver that lesson to make it effective and make it engaging. Keeping that at the forefront, because as I mentioned, today is going to be interactive and we're going to be sharing a lot of your experiences as I share a lot of research in integrating technology and learning. So as I said and stated before, or it was Antonio stated for me, my name is Karen Limbacher, and I've been an educator for over 25 years. As a student in education, I was very excited about technology. I was engaged using technology in the classroom as a student. But more importantly, when I became a teacher, I loved integrating technology in my classroom. I taught for 10 years in the classroom, and one of the biggest passions that I have ever seen is watching students thrive using technology to build and produce products. I've also been a trainer of trainers, or trainers of teachers, by being in the classroom and doing professional learning with teachers, where I was able to teach teachers how to embrace technology and how to use data to inform and make data-driven decisions. I was a developer, and I'm a content developer for instructional digital materials today, and one of the things I enjoy the most is being able to find which technologies best suit the teaching and learning standards that we'll be delivering. So as an educator, I'm passionate to create the best instructional products using the latest technologies that improve student learning. And today, we will be, there we go. Today, what I would like to make sure that I do is to empower you to think about how you integrate technology and connect two very important parts with technology, the content and pedagogy, and the rigor of your standards, not just putting technology in for technology's sake. In my work, I've heard stories, many stories of teachers saying how much they love and using technology, and they'll say, Karen, you should see this lesson. I used all this great technology, because they know how much I love technology and work with them. And I always stop and say, well, I'm curious to know, why, did you use that piece of technology? Why did you, or how did you use that technology? Not what was the technology. So that's important to know. My beliefs and what we're going to be talking about today is not just the technology, but the why and the how we use technology in the classroom. As a mother, my children, I heard that the PTO was purchasing devices for the 4th grade class. I was excited, but the first thing that I thought about is, what are they going to do with those devices? What is the device that's exciting, but what are they going to do to promote student learning? And so today we're really going to be focusing on empowering you with your teaching to improve student learning through not just technology, but integrating technology with pedagogy and content. So, but before we begin, I know when you came in, you all greeted and said where you're from, but let's find out a little bit about you. So this is going to be an interactive part. So on your screen, it's going to come up, and please select, how often do you use technology in your classroom? I'm going to need to know how to submit the responses. We have about 76% so far that have submitted the responses to me, and I'd be happy to share as soon as I learn the technology to share it out with everybody. Well, silly me. All I had to do was click next. Thank you. Oops, I need to go back. Okay, so here's the results. I'm not surprised. A lot of times a session that talks about integrating technology drives the people who actually love technology the most and use it most often. But from our results, I see that with us today are several people who use technology almost every day of the week. 63% that do that. Which is fantastic. And today I think you're going to learn a lot about our session, about other resources and support that might be able to be helping you as you're building out those lessons and making sure that the philosophies fit as well. So I have another question. So not only how often do you use it, but here's my most important part is, what kind of technologies do you usually use with your students? And I do know there's some of you that had mentioned to me that they are curriculum coaches or instructional district administration. So just with these pieces, maybe you can respond in how you've observed or seen most of the teachers in your classrooms using technologies rather than worrying about yourself. Maybe think about how they're using it and what do you see most often in the classroom. So you see I see that a lot of you are starting to respond. And the interesting part, when I wrote this to get a little bit more about you, to find out how you're using technology, I wanted to really gauge in 3 different ways. Like, how are you using it to get content? Are you using it to be more productive and having your students use 21st century skills? Are you using it to help get data to you as a teacher? These are just some points that I'd like to learn before we begin so I know how to connect as I'm talking about some of the information in our session. We have almost everybody respond. Okay, let me share that with you. So a lot of people use technology to present information. A lot also are using it to complete projects and homework. There's so many ways that that we can use technology today to integrate effectively and to promote the different aspects of the classroom, from even communicating to our students through homework assignments, building projects in the classroom even, and even to present information that the teacher wants to present, or using it, let's say, to research information. So it appears that we have a lot of people using technology in a variety of formats, which I would expect. Because technology is really changing the way that students are being able to access information and teachers are able to deliver, we're really talking about changing this culture of teaching. So this isn't a question for you to pull to, but it's something to think about. So where do you see yourself in digital teaching practices? We are really talking about more really understanding technology, using technology in your classroom, not just to use technology for technology's sake, but really using and understanding technology. So when we talk about integrating today, we're going to be talking about going from becoming more of a tech novice to becoming more of a tech expert with various ed tech softwares that are out there, and devices, and mobiles. We're also talking about moving from this stand and deliver traditional teaching methods to more of a digital facilitator, where you're learning to ask all these various different types of ways to manage the classroom, as well as bring technology to the forefront of learning. And most importantly, you're making selections. You're not just putting technology in because it's something cool and the kids think it's going to be fun, but it's purposeful technology. What instructional strategies are you using with your technologies? And really, this whole dynamic, as you see yourself moving across the continuum as technologies advance, as professional development grows, you yourself will see that your students are also learning differently. Your students have the greater success when they have the opportunity to learn how to access information rather than being passive in receiving information. Students also have the ability to go from just recalling to this deep understanding. We know that our standards and rigor and being able to truly understand what they're doing, technology allows students to learn in a different format as teachers are able to use technology to support that learning. And as well as, most importantly, not just preparing to be test ready, but really being prepared for the future and being prepared for those 21st century skills and the college and career readiness that students are being asked to change. And this is really the beauty and the benefits of learning best practices for really using technology in the classroom. But we know that's not easy, and we know that there's limitation. So now I've put up a polling question that I'd love to get your feedback in is, what do you feel is the greatest lack of to move teachers across those and even students across those continuums? What is happening in the schools? Right away everyone's jumping to training, and what is needed to help get these teachers and get students to actually shift their thinking. What are some of the challenges that you're finding in your buildings and in your classrooms? I'll give a few minutes for you to respond. So as you can see by the results, the majority of the users, 53%, are saying that maybe the lack of training is really one of the greatest lack of moving teachers into using technology. And I'm hoping that today's session will bring some light into how training and this model that we're using can help facilitate and improve some of the ways that teachers can use technology in the classroom without having to feel like they need to know it all. Teachers do lack the knowledge of how technology works, but I'm not sure if all of you are thinking this in the training, but I know that there's a lot of research out there. Actually, Petty Enmer and Ann Annerby Lefwich from Indiana University and Purdue University actually did a study to take a comprehensive look of what factors and why teachers don't use technology, and training was one of them, but it wasn't the lack of actually understanding the technology. It was actually the lack of the pedagogical knowledge of how to use technology in the classroom, meaning how to select the right tool for the right subject at the right time for the right students, which is definitely a challenge, and also one training that needs to be provided. Especially. So there's a model that I have used as a teacher, as a trainer, and also as a developer of digital materials that may help some of you, as I see a lot of questions coming into me that I'm trying to read as I'm going through, that are technology specialists, that are curriculum coaches, that are asking about how do they apply for various different students and various different teachers. So this model that we're going to be talking about today, that I'll be introducing to you, is called the TPACK model. This framework is first of all, the TPACK framework is a research-based framework from Dr. Punya Mishra and Matthew Kohler. And it actually, the research actually took place in 2006. So it's been out there for quite a while. But now with the new technologies that are happening, it's really been coming at the forefront of educators and to educators to help them plan and think about how content, pedagogy, and technology all wrap up together, so that they can actually make the best decisions of which technologies to use for which curriculums that they want to and which strategies they would like to go. So we're going to basically look at this model so that we can help those on the phone here today gain confidence in the integrating technology, but also supporting those that might integrate technology as well. To provide you all with the same language so that when we share or discuss as educators about technology, we can all be discussing in the same language. But most importantly, provide a mental framework for planning and implementing technology in your classrooms. So let's break this down a little bit. So the one part of TPACK is the what. So the what, or the content knowledge, or the CK knowledge, is one of the main circles in TPACK. So this just means exactly what it is. What is it that you're going to teach? What are the standards you have to cover? What are the concepts you are going to cover with your students? So the content knowledge refers to what the teachers must have in order to effectively teach that particular content area. So to be an effective teacher, you need to have content knowledge to be able to effectively teach using technology or just good teaching. So with that, I know that we have a lot of people in here that talked about what they use. What are some of the things you use most often that helps deliver content from a digital? Why don't you take a second to answer. What is some digital content that you use most often to deliver your content in your classrooms? And I know I have a lot of people that are calling or reaching out and saying that they're a coach and they don't really know how to answer these questions that I'm asking, because I'm asking very specific questions. So once again, I'm going to ask for you to think about if you are if you're somebody who works with other teachers, or if you're somebody who supports other classrooms, think about what you observe, what you've noticed, what are you seeing being most used, and if you don't see a lot of use, what type of materials would you think would be most effective for teachers as they're teaching in their classroom with their students. Okay, a few more minutes here, maybe seconds. Okay. Well, a lot of people said they use the internet for resources. I'm not surprised, because nowadays with companies like McGraw-Hill, who provide so many resources and digital cloud-based delivery, as well as other resources that are out there that you can find on the internet to support primary sources in social studies, in science, experiments, videos. I see a lot of people use videos to deliver content as well. You're right, there's a lot of material out there that can be used to support what you're trying to cover digitally. That's fantastic. The next part of the TPACK model is the pedagogical knowledge. So you have the content knowledge, and then you want to look at the pedagogical knowledge. This is the how. So how you teach. The things that you might decide to do about teaching, like, are you going to personalize that? Are you going to do a certain assessment strategy? Are you going to do a think, pair, share? Are you doing problem-based learning? This is what the knowledge that you have, or the art and science of actually teaching. This is the knowledge that you're required to create effective instruction. These are examples that Robert Marzano has in his book, Classroom Instruction That Works, Research-Based Strategies for Increasing Achievement. These are the things that, as a teacher, you need to know what works in the classroom, what works with your content area, in order to be an effective teacher. What's interesting about the pedagogy is there are so many different ways that strategies that you have based on your subject area. And I also realize that several of you are supporting several subject areas as well. So in the group chat, which I know a lot of you have been sending message and explaining, sharing out with the group things that they have been doing in the classroom, that's probably very powerful. I see somebody did a quick shout out of some online assessments and assignments and quizzes that they use as well. But is there any other ways? Now, we talked about content, so now I really want you to focus on pedagogy. Are there any type of digital strategies, or not even digital, just strategies you use to teach math, science, reading, writing, social studies? Type it in the group chat based on a subject area that you do. You might not teach one of these subjects, you might teach art or music. What are some of the pedagogical strategies that you use in your classroom? Go ahead and share with the group. Take a few minutes here. Discussions, fantastic. Student-centered, I'm so glad somebody mentioned that. Reading for understanding, nice. PBLs, flip model, wonderful. Inquiry-based learning, small group work, debates, wonderful. Online annotations. Nice job, Irene. Very good. There's so many different strategies that best support your practices, and a teacher needs to be able to know what strategies, as well as, or their pedagogical knowledge, as well as their content knowledge, to be effective in the classroom. So here is something that I like to share. This is the connection. The pedagogical content knowledge is actually the connection between the content and the pedagogy. And here's a great example that shows the combination of a pedagogical and content knowledge coming together. This is why science teachers teach rather than scientists. There's a pedagogy that has to come in and intersect with the content in order for effective instruction to happen. You have to understand how kids work. You have to understand how the lessons need to come together. It's not just about the lecture or the academic part of it. So this is a funny comic that you can use to say the difference between a teacher and an academic, especially in the science area. So, although content and pedagogy, Schulman was the person back in the 80s who actually found that the intersection between content and pedagogy is really the teaching at its best. But teaching at its best now doesn't rely on traditional teaching. It actually relies on a third component, which is the technology. So there's a third layer that is the technology knowledge, or the TK. This is how is technology used in the classroom. So based on this knowledge, teachers need to know what technologies are used in the classroom. What are ed tech technologies? And this is where we struggle. Where teachers sometimes with training say, hey, listen, I really don't know all the technologies out there. It's overwhelming. Well, just because there's a lot of technologies doesn't mean you have to know all of them. It really is just about knowing what might be available for what you're trying to do. Because remember, it's not just about the technology alone, it's about the pedagogy and the content all coming together. How to select and use the devices and the programs. So technology knowledge is very important as well. So if I look at technology, I'm gonna jump back to a slide here. If I look back at the TPACK model real quick, just as a frame of reference, what we talked about are these three big circles. And we talked about this middle circle right here being the pedagogical content knowledge. Well, there are two other overlapping pieces that haven't just started to be explored. It's how does technology work with content knowledge, and how does technology work with pedagogical knowledge. So let's take a look at the breakdown of how they work, because these are new or different than what has been going on since the beginning of Dr. Schulman, who really found the art of teaching between content and pedagogy. So let's take a look at those intersections and try to break those down a little bit for you. So here we are. We have the technological content knowledge, or the TCK. So the TCK really describes how technology is used to enhance deep and lasting knowledge. So the best technology supports the understanding of a content area, right? So is there an interactive map that will support that content area? We talked about already the different types of digital curriculums that you use for content already, online resources. And also could be just sophisticated tools to gather data and make observations and document your findings as well. I like the comment that in social studies too, there's a lot of great resources that really helps bring social studies alive. In that, by just reading about things in the past, there are definitely content videos and definitely primary source documents that you really could utilize to teach content in a digital format instead. So with that, I already see that some people are making comments about what they do, and Kelly was one of them. How about the rest of you? I have a question for everybody. In your chat, what type of technologies do you use to teach your subject areas? And these are just some subject areas. There's obviously a lot more. What are some digital technologies that you find that can help deliver that content besides just saying the internet resources? Anything specific that you could share with the group that you use? I see Google Classroom was up there. I see somebody wrote earlier there were some things that they do on the smartboard. Google Forms with videos and questions. Oh wow, that's fantastic. Khan Academy, definitely an open educational resources. There's so many available and good solid resources. I see a lot of really good feedback and comments that all of you should take a look at and share with each other. Continue to keep sharing as we're going through this presentation, as things come to your mind. Skyping with other groups, books on audio even. Those are other great ways to bring technology and content together in that intersection. So then we have the next side, which is the technological pedagogical knowledge, or the TPK. This is how you use particular technologies when teaching. This is basically how do you choose and teach well with the technologies, or how does technologies best support a particular instructional strategy or model or activity. This could include productivity tools. Like, what productivity tools do you have? I have an example that we have in our program at McGraw-Hill, where we have interactive timelines, and this one happens to be a graph, interactive graphs, where we're able to take a strategy of graphing and be able to plot points interactively and be able to see and build relationships there. I see a lot of you using a lot of excellent things. Oh, even gaming. I see a lot of games and examples as well. As there's so many educational technologies. So we see being an expert in technology is not the critical piece. It's being an expert in your curriculum and knowing which technologies are most accessible to support that learning is really what we're talking about. Oh yeah, somebody likes Kahoot. I like that as well. So we can skip this next activity since everyone's jumping in already. Best ways to use technology to teach different types of pedagogy, more so than just getting content. You can do things, I see a lot of things for collaboration tools, a lot of activities that can be done for inquiry, virtual labs that could be set up to really teach the exploratory activities. I know at McGraw-Hill we talk and think about all the different types of important ways that you teach in order to try to put that together, the best ways to deliver instruction using, let's say, the different type of pedagogies and or content as well. So, in looking at TPACK, there we go. So if you look at the model of TPACK and these three major knowledge areas that teachers need to possess in order to integrate technology appropriately in teaching and learning, you need to have your content knowledge, you need to have your pedagogical knowledge, and your technological knowledge all intersect. And the intersecting points are critical. But if you look in the very center, that is your sweet spot. That is where your technological, pedagogical, and content knowledge, or TPACK, meet. This is that part when I talked to you at the very beginning of the session. I said, think about one of your favorite lessons. It's most likely, if you think back to what you were thinking about, what content you delivered and what pedagogy you were trying to deliver, and which technology you use. It's probably one of your favorite lessons because it probably was hitting that sweet spot. So it is definitely one of those that brings the foundation and the foundational knowledge and the specialized knowledge with the digital knowledge that impact and create what is called the TPACK. Thinking about these items together and how you build lessons, you also have to remember around the outside in the white area, you see that is the context. And that area is probably the part that influences your TPACK the most. It's the area that you have to actually go back, you actually have to think about before you begin doing any planning for integrating technology. How many devices do you have? That's a context. Do you have any firewalls that you can't get to? You might find the greatest activity, but you have a firewall and you can't get to. You might have students with different backgrounds and different language barriers. You have to take all that stuff to influence your TPACK. So although you might have a friend or a teacher colleague who has the greatest lesson, you might have to tailor it based on your influences, because of your context that influenced your TPACK, which could be different. and your arrangements could be different. So that's TPACK. There are so many resources available on TPACK to go deeper than what I will ever be able to do in our short period of time together. I have provided in the handout tab, so before you leave today, make sure you go and download it. There are just a few links of information of TPACK. There's a tpack.org site. I've even just Googled on YouTube TPACK and found tons of really good speakers who have spoke about, I mean, even the founders, Cooler and they share their information, how they are still improving and making better uses of TPACK even today. So this is just the TPACK. So what does TPACK do? TPACK is important. I believe that there are things that we need to consider when applying TPACK. So when I talk about applying TPACK, and the next part of this is really about how do you use TPACK to as part of your planning and a part of your decisions. So, and when you apply TPACK, there are things to consider, and maybe I will put those on the screen here. You know, you need to consider what type of assessments are you going to be going. You don't have to do it in this order by any chance. Everybody has their own way of lesson planning, but really, how are you going to assess, and what are you trying to get out of the lesson that you're going to create? What are the standards that you are trying to cover? You have to really take those standards and unpack them and find out the content and the verb that's inside there to make sure that you're actually delivering what you need to deliver from a content standpoint. Making sure you're covering that standard accurately, because if you know, as you know, covering the standard is more than just checking off the box. So making sure you have that content language. You also need to determine what are your pedagogical strategies that you're going to be trying to cover, what fits that group that you have, and most importantly, what technologies do you have? What technologies do you have in your classroom? What technologies are available at your school? And how many, do you have devices per student? All those things you have to consider before you actually can go ahead and plan with TPACK. But once you have those things considered and you have gone through those items, you actually would have the ability to lesson plan using the TPACK model as its framework, marrying it with how you lesson plan. So there's so many thank you, Windsor. There's so many ways that you lesson plan. And I'm not asking you to change your lesson plans. I'm just asking you to think about how you can use this model that I actually came across this model as a curriculum builder for McGraw-Hill for instructional material. This is what we use to really think about what kind of materials we're going to be developing to provide educators like yourself that will be useful, effective, efficient, and easy to use, but thinking through all these pieces so that we can do some of that work as we are developing. So these are some things that that research has shown that we can use to effectively lesson plan using TPACK. So I'm going to use lesson plan lightly. So you don't start with the technology first. I'm sure all of you have done that. Somebody's told you, hey, you have to try this. It's really cool. And then the first thing you do is you look at it, you try to uncover it, and you do have to know the technology. But then you're like, okay, so what can I do with it? Right? So instead, I'm asking you to think a little bit differently. I'm having you think a little bit about what is it that you want to cover? What are the goals you're actually trying to cover first before you go ahead and make your decisions of which technology to use. If you know teachers who are struggling because they don't know how to integrate technology, they will start integrating technology more if they focus on what they are used to doing, which is what are the learning goals? What are the standards you're trying to cover? What are you trying to deliver first? What are those standards? Unpack them. Figure out what you're trying to say. The next one, after you have chose your learning goals, especially if they're ones that are mandated by your state or your district or their national standards, you then go into what is called making pedagogical decisions. So this framework that I'm sharing with you was actually an approach that was done by Judy Harris at William & Mary. And she has many exciting ways and has done a lot of hard work. There is a lot of work that has been done in understanding how to go ahead and think about this, TPACK breakdown. And making pedagogical decisions truly are determining, like there's 8 pedagogical decisions you should make after you've determined what learning goal you're going through. So let's take a look at what they are. And I apologize, this is a little blurry. But I did put the link to this actual information in the handout. So basically what you're doing is you're determining your pedagogical decision based on the content that you're choosing. Is this activity based on your students, based on what you're trying to accomplish, more student-centered or teacher-centered? Is the type of learning more convergent or divergent? Do they have to understand it, meaning convergent, or do they actually have to be able to design or develop something? That's the one way that I always, or draw a conclusion. That's more divergent. To all these different types, there's 8 different pedagogical ways that you just kind of chart your thinking before you go ahead and decide, what exactly what activity you're going to do, because you need to think through all these pedagogical decisions. Is it small group? Is it individualized group? What resources are you going to be required for this? So this will step you through being able to plan using TPACK, because this is on the section, the PK, helping you determine your decisions. The first one was the CK. Now you have planned doing your PK. So once you've determined your pedagogical decisions and you've done your planning with the lessons, let me go through this little slide here. Learning goals. Then you can begin to select your activity types. So your activity types are basically just what they sound like. They are different content areas, have specific taxonomies that get broken down to help teach that concept the best. So I can go into an entire other webinar on activity types, but I'm going to instead just share with you very quickly some examples of activity types. And there's a link in the handout to Judy Harris and Mark Holfer, who is from the College of William & Mary, who has done this work already. They have taken every subject, or 10 subject areas, and broken down them into different taxonomies. So like for math, there's like 5 taxonomies. For reading, there's different taxonomies, social studies, etc. And what they do is then they provide those taxonomies. That what they did is they created different types of activities you would do, or the different types of activities you could do based on what pedagogical decisions you went. So if we go back to the demonstration example in math, if you were trying to do produce as one of the taxonomies in mathematics, it gives a brief description of what you can do to do a demonstration, and it takes the other layer of the TPACK and providing a few examples of recommended ideas of different technologies that could be used to support that activity type. So these activity types are what you would want to do select next. And here's just a few other ones. This one's in, there's some in English. They go from kindergarten to high school. They provide various breakdowns in that 3 model. So once you learn about the taxonomy specifically, you can learn how you can apply that into selecting the right activity based on that. Here's some examples of social studies. But once you've selected the right activity, then the most important part comes, right? So you choose your learning goal, just to review. You determine what pedagogical decision based on those 8 continuums. Then we go to selecting the right activities, and you might select several activities to do a scaffold instruction or to pace yourself through. You need to determine, of those activities, how are you going to assess? Are you going to do formative assessment during the activity? I'm not talking about just doing a quiz and a test at the end, but really what assessments could you provide to while you're doing these activities? What can you get out of it? Think about those, plan those. And then, most importantly, you can do that 3rd column, which is which technology would you use specifically to address that activity type that you had selected and to deliver those. So if you take this type of model with your teachers or with yourself or in your next lesson. I guarantee you'll be able to get through the TPACK model successfully, and you will have a richer experience and greater opportunity to build up your integrating your technology lessons. These are my additional resources. They're in the handout as well. I'm going to see if there are any questions that have came up that I need to be able to answer as well. If you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and write them in the chat. We're just at our 45-minute presentation, so I just want to see if there's any questions that I can try to answer as well. Okay, the resource is the resources is located where it says on. I believe if your screen looks like mine, on the left-hand side of your screen, you might see a thing called handouts. If you see an item called handouts, you will see a link, and the link has the link to all the different pieces that I showed you. The TPACK.org to give you more information about TPACK. The information from William and Mary, Judy Harris, and her links to the activity types and the pedagogical pieces. There are really three main components to that, but I also put a few of my extra resources in there as well for further investigation as you build up your TPACK and influence your TPACK as you prepare for your teaching and learning. Let me see if there's anything else. Okay, so is everybody finding the the handout? I should probably just check here. Okay, excellent. Thank you for those people that responded. Thank you as well, webcast engineer number 1. There are many webinars that McGraw-Hill hosts and different models that might help impact you. So please feel free to keep looking in and seeing if you can join us and listen to other ways to most effectively, teach and ways that we can support you to greatness and to helping you every day. That's what we're here for. We do our best to provide you an understanding of our products and also the ways that we build our products so that you can see we want to make sure that we have the pieces that you need to be successful as well in your classroom. Is there anybody else that would like any other questions? Okay. All right, I thank everybody again for joining me, and I hope you enjoy your TPACK and learned a lot today. Thanks so much.